Everyone, welcome to the Casey Catch Up. This is, I guess, a special edition. Kuey wants to interview me, and I guess a good way to debrief from the Hawaiian racing, and also, yeah. But yeah, I hand it over to Josh.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, this is a different one, but I really wanted to interview James just because, firstly, I wasn't there this year to experience it. So I really wanted to hear firsthand what it was like on the ground as a competitor. And also, as James being the defending champ of the M2O, I just wanted to know what it was like this year. So let's start off with how was your training before the Paddle-a-Mua? So I know you were training a lot back home in Sydney, and you went maybe a week before the Paddle-a-Mua to get some runs in at the Maliko. Tell me, how was your experience? And yeah.
Yeah, I guess training, I think, has taken a new meaning after this year's racing, because what we were doing as training was like downwind runs and like on water foiling. And I think I would say my training was perfect for that sort of stuff. Like the Maliko runs were fun. We managed to test out a bunch of different gear. I used foils as big as a 960R and as small as a 680R, and I guess everything in between. And yeah, everything was feeling good. Speeds were good. Conditions weren't epic. They were good, but they weren't epic. Probably the best run we had was an AD's run over on Oahu. We got a really fun run with Hobie and Ryan, and that ADs to China Wall was insane. The boys are calling it a 10 out of 10, and I think I was on a 680 that day, and yeah, it was just they sort of likened it to like a tree run. We always like talk about black diamond, blue, green. This is like a double black through the trees, like backwash, and yeah, just super fun. I think we all came down at least once, and then the Hawaii Kai's run was epic too. It was a good one to sort of get a feel of the finish line, and that was something that I guess I've spoken to you, Josh, about, and it was it's tricky. Don't get me wrong, but it's definitely something that's doable to get all the way into the finish, especially where they put the finish line for this year. Like, I thought it might have been the windsock. I think a lot of the guys were training as if it was actually the beach at Kaimana, and it was about 100 meters, 150 meters outside the windsock. So the first run I did on Oahu, it was a pretty light day. It was high tide and north winds, and it was flat from like Black Point, or not flat, but there was swells, but the wind was offshore. So I guess I sort of catch myself. It wasn't flat because there was still bumps running all the way in. For me, it was very much like a southwesterly day going into Palm Beach for those that live in Sydney. That the swells still wrap in, and if you ride those swells, it's fine. But if you're relying on solely wind swell, you are in serious strife, because the wind just like takes you out to sea. And that was a bit of a wake up call, like for me, that first run. I used the 770, and I got in, but it was hard work I was seriously blowing to get all the way into the windsock. I think I actually put up on my YouTube, and like you can kind of see that was actually the run that we found out you weren't able to come to the country, Kuey. That was a bummer. That was like such a weird, like, yeah. But yeah, it was super hard, and I was blowing like serious heart rate, and cardio, and yeah. So like basically, training was good. Like I managed to sort out all my foils, sort out all my equipment, boards, paddles, all that sort of stuff. Get a good understanding of where the run is, where the finish is, and yeah, I felt as prepared as I was last year, if not more prepared than I was last year. So I guess to put that in perspective, shows how far the sport's come in a year. So yeah.
Yeah, were you coming over like with a bit of a chirp in your step because you had confidence coming in as the reigning champ, or were you kind of coming in thinking, have I done enough? I know you're fortunate enough your job is foiling, like you teach people how to foil. So a lot of other people that in this race, they might have a normal 9 to 5 job. They don't get in the water as much as you. So I think you definitely have an advantage over some people because you've committed to a lifestyle like this. But yeah, how is your like confidence levels and like mentality? And even like, I know, did you come into this, were you having some little aches and pains that you were kind of maintaining or working on?
I never go to any fall race confident, especially just because I know it's progressing so fast. Last year, honestly, like people ask me, how do you think you go? And it was my first time ever racing Molokai to Oahu on a foil. And I said to people, like, if I get the top 10, top 20, like that's how many good foilers there are. And the way the racing eventuated last year or panned out last year, it was really quite like it suited the Aussies basically. It was lighter winds with the start and the finish the way it was. If you look at the results for Maui to Molokai, um, that was probably how I guess it panned out more similar to this year. So last year I was fourth and I was a fair way off the pace of Kane, Edo, Andrew for that race. Kai and I were pretty well, even Kai. Kai was a fair ways ahead of me in that race too, and I managed to get him on the my skills factor in terms of training or coaching as my profession. Like that helps the the low wind skills. It doesn't help the high wind skills because when you're coaching, you're generally coaching people that aren't going fast. So you're doing a lot of paddle ups. You're using big foils. You're doing loops around people. You're doing like it's low wind skills, which is something that I think Oscar and I really showcased last year. Whereas you look at Edo this year and last year, and he had some serious high wind skills, fast bump skills. Same as Andrew, same as Kane. And so looking at the forecast for M2M, it was this year was much lighter, and like I was chatting to the boys, and we're kind of rubbing our hands together because lighter winds are definitely more advantageous, I guess, for us because of the way we foil at home and the way that I train, and ended up being a pretty good channel, which was super fun. It's funny because I want for competitive reasons, I'd prefer light winds, but for fun reasons, of course, I prefer strong winds. We all prefer strong winds. So I went
Yeah,
into
but Hawaii light winds is our good winds, really. Hey.
Well, exactly, like light wind.
Mm.
Like we need Hawaii no wind to be, seriously though, because we do a lot of runs where it's 10 knots and 10 knots Hawaiian is still pretty good because of the fetch. So yeah, it was I was going in with an open mind. I was stoked to be coming back as the reigning champ, and I was super proud of that. To get the seed #1 for M2O was pretty special. Had #1 flag, #1 sticker on my board, and that definitely wasn't lost on me. That was pretty cool. But realistically, after Paddle and M2M, obviously I didn't feel like #1 seed.
Come on, mate. #1 30-year-old seed. That's the one.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's run through chronologically how it all went down. So Paddle was the first race in the trilogy, the Koa Kai Triple Crown. How are the nerves first race, everyone's been looking forward to this all year. Were you kind of I think last year you had a few knots in your stomach, don't you? Because I've never seen you nervous before. And you were kind of oh, my guts are a bit funny.
Yeah.
Did the nerves get to you this year, or were you kind of just
I honestly think last year I had a stomach bug because I literally felt so crook for 2 or 3 days around that race. And I almost I think I had the runs. Something was weird and I thought it was nerves, but I think it was looking back, unless maybe I was just super nervous. I didn't even feel nervous. Paddle, yeah, of course I was nervous. We've all trained for this for the best part of a year. And Paddle was the first race, which I love Paddle and I love the what it stands for, but it's such a short race, it's such a sprint. And if you get a bad start, you're pretty much out of the race. If you get a good start and you miss or you don't get a good bump in that first couple kilometers, you're also pretty much out of the podium race. And this year it felt exactly that. I had a good start in that race. I used a 770R with a 120 tail, medium fuse. It was not super windy. It was windier than last year's, I think, but it was it's funny. The more I do Maliko runs, especially that inside line, the more it feels kind of like a bay run or a really no swell ocean run, because in summer in Hawaii, there's just not really large swells, and the straightest line for that Paddle or the run to Kanaha is sort of reef running, and with kind of no swells. Basically, we can foil faster than the swells are moving in summer. So it's a pump fest. It's was it 10, 12 Ks, and we did it in like 25 minutes. I did it in 25 minutes. Had a really good battle with Gage and Perth. They were where we came into the reef pretty much together, and I managed to get Perth, but didn't get Gage. So that was, I think, about 7th place there.
What was the start like? Was it a bit of a rolling start, or some people cheating, or were like all the good guys kind of bunched up because you guys wanted to have a bit of like a gentleman's, if we're all going to be in this, we have to kind of get up together?
I was spread out. Like I definitely think I was further out for that one, and the start was good for me anyway. I seeded start. Everyone got a little bit toey. It was I think it was a 110, whatever. It was a 110 start, I think, but we started at like 107. So rightly so, I think the organisers did a good job with the start. The wingers went first at 105, I think it was, and all the start was just like sort of the line just started rolling forward. Like it was, we probably started, I don't know, 500 meters down from the gulch. Like we all paddled out, and then like people just started standing up and paddling towards the start line, and other people stand up, and it was just like a bit of a rolling start. And you got to be you don't want to be first, but you want to be second. And like the line, you don't want to jump the start. But yeah, I had a good start, and I think I spoke to you, Kuey, but I was just so focused on trying to go fast that I wasn't being efficient, which you can kind of get away with for that race. But I was just running super low on the mast. I didn't feel like I ever got one really good bump where I could stand there and glide. And I think my heart rate was the highest for that race. Like it was just you just couldn't let up. And yeah, it feels like a while
What
ago
line
now.
did you take? Did you cut right and then try get onto those big swells, or did you just kind of just go straight and pump?
Because we started so far out, I'd set a run line, and I'd started the run line from like further out than I would normally start, but I was already like double that. So I kind of
You're
cut
just looking
in.
for swells to hook onto.
Yeah, I sort of cut in, and I didn't really ever get a really good swell, but I had pretty good speed. And I once I was inside, I just sort of was looking at my run line and just sort of followed that. But definitely an inside line, like reef running sort of style line. It was super inside. And
Looking for that Camp 1 racetrack speedway.
Yeah. I came in pretty much or just after Camp 1. Like there's like 3 sort of entrances to get into Kanaha. And when last year I went the last, so around uppers and sort of cut across the swells. Edo took the first one last year, and then this year I took the first one because Gage took it and Perth went the second one. So I got Perth by taking an inside line at Kanaha. Perth just stayed out a little bit longer, then cut in, and the distance he took going out for longer was able to just get my nose in front. But yeah, it was just that's just like such a sprint. It's 25 minutes, and I actually find it a really hard distance.
Is it a run up the beach this time, or was it at the buoy or something?
It was at the buoy, which was good, but the timing chips were on the beach, so it was really hard. Like I feel they had like a video camera and spotters, and they were taking numbers, but they couldn't see numbers very well. So they ended up sort of for the results relying on the run up the beach, but they told everyone at the briefing that it wasn't a run up the beach and just walk across the line whenever you're ready. So some people, it was a shame that the timing kind of was a bit of a bit stuffed up in all races because of that. And I'm not sure what the answer is, but maybe a run up the beach is the best thing, or I don't know.
I love the run up the beach. I love it.
Yeah, I think the run up the beach is good. It's just a little bit dangerous, probably is the best way to put it. People.
That's why I like it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't mind it either, because I think it's sort of part of it. That's something you can work, you can practice. But yeah, it wasn't around at the beach this time, and I don't know. It was kind of a bummer. It wasn't because of the timing. They should have just said it's not a run up the beach, but once you finish, stay in order and walk across the line, like in a line, so to speak, so that it's like orderly. But it was just like Perth kind of run up past me, and I was like, "Hey, I beat you," like sort of stuck my foot out to like tie with him on the timing because I'm like, I'm sure the timing's going to come into it somewhere. And so Perth and I tied on that walk up the beach thing, but I beat him by, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds. Super close. But yeah, that was fun. It was a good race, but it was, yeah, I would have loved for it to be like 30 knots or like less wind. It was just that funny in between where you can use fast foils, but you just have to pump the whole way. So it was one of the sort of, I guess, the themes of this year's racing was that I think it's become too much of a point A to point B slugfest and just pump fest. And it like it's not why anyone gets into downwind foiling. It's the best way to put it. You know, if I wanted to work that hard in a race, to be honest, I probably would still be stand up paddling. You know, if that's what I loved about the sport. But I guess we'll get into that more. So like sort of M2O. But it was fun. But it was more fun to see where you're at, not so much fun while you're doing it.
I was curious, how are the vibes in Maui this year? I remember last year, it was very much pillowcases over foils. Was it kind of similar vibes this year, like super secret shit going down, or was it kind of? I feel like you guys don't give a shit. Code just probably have their foils just lying anywhere. You can just grab them.
Yeah, code foils was like we were writing production foils. I used like we done a few prototypes, but nothing was better than our R series from last year's race. So we in the top guys, I was probably using the oldest foil, which is pretty amazing. It's been 12 months, and that just shows that the development of foils are, you know, it's coming along. The worst, you know, pillowcase people were the Armstrong guys, as always, but they're doing it.
They love it, but
yeah, they're doing it to protect their
I feel like
retailers.
it's a marketing trick, isn't it? We
Yeah,
should just put pillowcases over our foils and just pretend we got new foil section.
yeah, fully. Look, I know they do it to protect their retailers because if they really if people see it and shops don't have it, then people aren't going to buy the old stuff. But also they're literally prototyping whilst they're there, so they're trying like 4 or 5 different foils whilst over there. So I get it, but maybe just don't be prototyping whilst the whole foiling world is there if you don't want to have to deal with the pillowcases. The other guys, Jeffrey and Finn, they're the original pillowcase mafia. You know, they're like always they've always had it since like 2018. You know, so
Well, that was, to be honest, that was a really rude awakening, and good on Duotone. Like, you know, from last year where they really weren't in the running at all to this year, like, you know, Finn and Jeffrey absolutely smashing it. Like,
yeah.
Duotone's got some special sauce going on now.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I think they just didn't have something special last year. I think Jeffrey and Finn are like serious athletes. They've been foiling for longer than anyone, like as long as Kai, downwind foiling. And, you know, Kai's the marketing machine, but Jeffrey and Finn were like testing at the same time with Alex Aguirre back in like 2016. You know, they've grown up with foiling. And last year, it was, to be honest, it was more a surprise that they weren't in the mix last year than that they were in the mix this year. So I think Duotone definitely got them on good foils, but they're just also not on bad foils, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
Because they're
No,
hammers.
I was rooting for Finn at the end. I was rooting for all the boys, but like I was just thinking about it, like, you know, Finn's so young, and last year he won the wing, and then I was like, holy shit, this year's gonna win the SUP. Like he's gonna
Yeah,
be like, he needs to retire after that. And he's like, what, only 20 or something? I was like,
yeah,
holy shit,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
crazy.
No, I think everyone likes an underdog, and based on last year's result, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Edo was more of a favorite and Finn was the underdog. So yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
was cool to see Finn do really well, for sure.
So
Yeah,
I think there is
M2M.
a few. Maybe. Well, I was just about to say maybe we should start pillowcasing our foils because I've seen there's a couple of foils that are looking very codish right now.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna.
I've
Look,
even heard a brand say it is referring it to as a code number, and I was like, holy shit.
yeah, that's a bit shocking, and I think people who know. So I'm not going to say it on here,
Yeah,
but there's definitely like
yeah.
you can't stop it. Like that's what's always going to happen if you come up with a good
Mm-hmm.
design, then people are going to copy it, you know. And you know, I was chatting to Oscar, and he sort of mentioned that a few people have copied their foils too, and from Armstrong. And look, you got to take it as a compliment, and that you're doing something
Totally.
right. because there's, everyone wants to be on the best gear, and if a brand can't come up with their own stuff and they feel they've got to copy other stuff to make their stuff in the mix, then yeah, that's a huge compliment. So the other thing is, I guess, for those that come up with the good designs, you just got to keep pushing. You can't just rest on rest on that one design. And Marcus has been working hard to try to better stuff since last year, and still working. So we'll see how that all goes. But I still felt like
I think from looking at like the stats and how close everyone was this year, I think it was definitely a more even playing field this year. I think last year it was very much only a few brands had the right foils to get it done in a fast time, and other foils were just like nowhere near the pace. But I feel like this year it's more leveled out, and it's more relying now on the athlete versus the technology. I think it's still definitely a little bit technology, but like I think
I totally agree.
It was more. It was
I think that the foils are all in the, like, if you look at Edo, for example, who won Molokai to win pretty much every race pretty well. He was using the same foil as Jacko and Simeon, who are hammers in their own right. And look, they didn't come second. It wasn't first, second, third. There was a bunch of different foils in the top 10 or even top 20. And it was I totally agree. I think last year Oscar and I had an advantage for the course and the foils that we chose for M2O, and this year, like, we didn't have that advantage anymore. And it's more just like a leveling out of everything, I believe.
Yeah, so let's change gears to M2M. That was how many days after the Paddler Mill? Did you have some rest days in between, or
that was 4 days, I think. Also, 5 days, I guess, but 4 days of foiling or 4 days of resting, depending on how you're looking at it between. And I think I had one rest day, but it's just like everyone's there and the conditions are good, so there's plenty of time on the water. And I guess in hindsight, maybe I need to rest a bit more, but I wouldn't change anything. I felt like I had a good race for M2M.
Yeah.
The forecast was pretty light. The Aussies in particular was super worried. Dave West used the 10.75R for the Piloli, which is just like, I don't know what he was thinking. Bennett decided not to use hand paddles because he didn't think he was going to get up. In hindsight, I think he wished he did. The conditions were more than hand paddleable, in my opinion. And seeing what he did in M2O as well, I think he could have done it. And Zane used the 130 Florence rather than the 110, and he could have used the 110. But I kind of got caught up in that. I actually, when we got there, and it was in the morning, it's always light. I actually had bolted on an 860R because it was looking pretty light. And then I sort of walked down and had a look at the ocean, like 10 minutes after I'd seen it, and the wind picked up. And a friend of mine, Livio, sort of who's doing the wing, he was like, "It's going to be good." He showed me like the local forecast, like the weather service forecast, and it was 15 to 20 knots east northeast, which is a good direction. And he's like, "What are you using?" I'm like, "This." Is like, "Oh, maybe use something smaller." And it was a good tip. It was a good tip. So I threw on the 770, and like
I know exactly that guy's voice. Hey, exactly how
he's
he
so
would have said
funny.
it.
He's like, "Oh." He's like, "Maybe you should use something smaller." Like, and I was like whatever. Like, he's
planted
like,
the seed.
yeah, he was fully. He's like, you know what to use, but just like, it was good. I was stoked. I chatted to him before the race because it was a good call. I don't think I would have been heaps slower on the 870. Sorry, 860 than the 770, but because I was on the 770, I could push that a little bit harder. And
yeah, you would have been maxing the 860 versus like still got a bit more room to move with the 770.
Yeah, but for like, I guess
Probably.
Yeah, my top speed was only like 34 k's an hour. So like for the whole channel, and that's pretty slow. It was super groomed. So I feel like the 860, it could have worked, but I would have been slower. Tom Constant used the 860, and he didn't go too bad, but he wasn't never in the race at the top. I guess on that race, like I had a good start, and I was right there with Finn and Jeffrey and Kane at the very beginning, and it was honestly amazing how much quicker they were going than me. I just could not keep with them.
Ooh.
They were just like pumping.
And do you know what they were riding? Like similar sized foils, or were they just like attacking the whole time
They were
nonstop?
just
No rest.
attacking. Like I was sort of sitting and gliding, and then like I rode a couple with Finn, and he just like just kept pumping up and over, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do that. Like, and I honestly think to be doing what they were doing, I had to be using a 680. I just like I need to be using a smaller foil. So I and working harder. I didn't feel like I was doing any like I made no mistakes, but I just was
Do
losing
you guys
ground to
all
them.
take the same line this year? Like you kind of stayed close to is it Lanai and then
Yeah,
cut into
I
Molokai?
followed Kane's line. And yeah, I was much wider than last year. I did a little bit more distance. I think I did like 45 Ks, whereas last year I did like 43. I think this year the inside line might have been better. If I'd gone the inside line, I probably would have used the 860, and it would have been probably about like less distance, but more like point to point speed. But on the outside line, I really wanted to maximize, like get the 770 up and humming. And I think the outside line was probably the best if you're using a faster foil. And in hindsight, I probably could have used like the 680 and just had to work super hard, but been probably quicker. And it's like, you asked about training, and like, with my coach Casey Club, I always tell people about like efficiency. There's a speed that you can go a little bit faster using a smaller foil, but you got to work like twice as hard. Using the 770, that was the foil that I would have trained for and would have used. It was perfect. But the 860 would have allowed me to go a straight line and be more of an inside line, and it would have been sort of similar. I would have been able to maximize the speed on those inside bumps. But the 680 would have been maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds to 60 seconds faster, but I would have worked about 50 to 60% harder. So in terms of like the level that you need to be, I know that's what you got to do. But for like the race of M2O being in, 2 days time, I'm pretty stoked I use the 770 and not the 680. So it was super interesting.
I was watching the live feed switching between a few people's boats, and it definitely looked like the inside line was horrible.
Yeah.
Like what you said, if you had a bigger foil and you could have just like worked your way through it, like maybe it would have been faster because it's a closer distance, but it looked freaking flat in there. Like even
always.
like the outside line that you guys were taking, it still looked pretty light towards the end. Like I was surprised when I heard like all you guys were on such small foils and making your way through that section, because from watching like the iPhone videos, it didn't look super chopped out. Like it didn't look like heaps of energy, to be honest.
No, it wasn't. And like I said, like my top speed was 34. I think the Maliko run at Paddler wasn't even windy, but my top speed was like 36, so, and those stats, well, I never really like top speed. It does tell you the energy that's on offer out there. And like at home, I'm often above 40 Ks an hour, at my top. And averages, you can create a good average by working hard. And that's what all the top guys did. They were moving. It was super impressive. Yeah. So, yeah, I felt like I had a great line, like a fun line anyway. Like I had a super fun race, and that's something that.
And that was a different finish to last year. Hey, you're on the marina side, right?
Yeah, that's the normal finish. So normally that's where we finish. But last year they had like a dredger, like in the way, so they finished on the other side. So yeah, it was a longer pump to the finish.
It looked hard.
You know what? That was actually a much harder finish than M2O this year, like by a fair bit. Yeah, it was a lot further to pump. Like it was light from fairway, like probably a K out, and you had to pump all the way into the reef, and then it was like another like 200 or 300 meters pump. So it was like like proper
and
flat
wind
water
there,
pump.
or was it was it wind, or was it wind on your back a little bit?
Nah, a little bit offshore. If anything, it was super. Didn't feel like any wind. It was super light.
It looked horrible. Like because a lot of people came down there and I think got overtaken. Did you make it to the end?
Yeah, I did, and I managed to get Kane, same as I got Kai last year by like pumping past at the end. Which is obviously that's the benefit of using a larger foil, and 680 I wouldn't have got all the way in there, no way. But looking at the top guys, it didn't matter, because if you go that much faster through the channel, you'll then be able to like make up, like if you come down for like Edo, Jeffrey, Finn, and Andrew all did not make it to the finish line on foil. They paddled like the last 10 to 50 to 100 meters, depending on who it was. And so when I saw that, I'm like, man, these guys they're pushing the limits of what they're able to use in the channel, and they're doing it because they get that extra 2 or 3 seconds per kilometer in the channel, and you do that over 40 kilometers, 45 kilometers. That's a lot, and they can manage that. They can sacrifice 10 to 20 seconds of paddling on their stomach at the end, which a bit of a wake up. Like that was the first, like paddle and Mullet, you can't really tell much because it's such a short race, whereas that one was like, when I watched Edo's replay of his girlfriend did the live, and I was like sizes and all, it doesn't really tell much, but you can tell what size foils people are using when they have to pump upwind to the finish like that. And that was, I'm like, huh, they're using like a 680 or smaller, size foil.
Yeah.
Relative to the
that
code
was
range, anyway.
I think out of all those people that you just mentioned, I think Kane got dealt the worst hand, because I think he was literally in that front pack, and then I don't know if I heard he had a cramp or something happened like
Yeah.
right
No, I
at the
spoke to him
end when he
after.
came.
Yeah, his back leg cramped up, and I think a lot of people experience that in M2O. And I'm not even sure if it's a cramp, but it's just like muscle fatigue. I think it comes from like lactic acid buildup, and like the muscle spasms, which is cramp like. But normally people associate cramps with a lack of salts, and I don't think it's a lack of salt. I think it's just like we're working so hard that the muscles are giving up. Yeah. And Kane had that. He came down like he said it took him 10 minutes to paddle in, and yeah, he lost a lot of places for sure.
What did you get for that one?
I think I was 10th. I think I was bang on 10th for that
lovely.
one. So it was kind of like, I think I feel like I was pretty consistent. I think Paddlemura, I guess, I had a good race. And then for the channel crossings, that longer distance sort of shows some people had better races, some people had worse races. And yeah, I was happy with that. Like I didn't feel like I didn't do anything wrong. I was just like, I honestly felt like I was off the pace from the first 5 kilometers because of the way that Jeffrey, Finn, Kane, Andrew, and Edo just sort of flew past. And it was foil choice, but also training. I hadn't trained that way, and they've stepped it up physically. They've kind of made it a running race instead of a surfing race, which is the way sport is.
Yeah, totally. So I guess the hardest thing that I found running into this Triple Crown was that the race was so bunched together. So you just finished this 45-kilometer race. Now you're on Molokai, and you've got a day in lieu. Is it?
Yeah, one day. Yeah.
So what did you do? Did you literally just put your feet up and rest, or did you kind of be social, or did you kind of stick to yourself?
We were staying on the west side where I guess the race started last year, and on the day off is Maori to Molokai, they're a bit understaffed, and they had a lot of foilers to sort of move around, and we ended up getting to our place pretty late, like 6 p.m. or something over on the west side, and I didn't even think we had dinner. It was just like we had food, and like the Marcus, Ben, Dan, and Ange, and Harry had to break up because there's only so many places in the shuttle, and to have like 6 people, 7 people in a shuttle is like the whole shuttle, and you can't really say to other people, oh no, we're taking this shuttle. So we split up and decided 2, 2, and 2, and worked out that Marcus and Ben had the food that we had made for dinner, and they were the last on the shuttle. And the last shuttle, the trailer with all the gear got a flat tire, so they didn't get back to the place until like 9:30. So like we had food after the race at the like awards thing, and then I literally bought a bag of chips and some salsa, and that was my dinner after the race, which was
wow,
pretty ordinary. But that's just the way that the food bags ended up, which is a bummer because we had planned like a bunch of leftovers. And then the day between, in the morning went for a swim and walked around. And then I started like prepping like a good dinner because we had all these veggies. I made like this big sort of like roasted all these veggies and made like a big pasta sort of mix. and I started cooking that. And then we had to go over the other side because the briefing was over the other
Oh,
side.
you guys brought food from Maui, like
Yeah.
in prep for in case you didn't get food there or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a
Clever.
cook up at the house over there, and then we went to the briefing over on Koa Kai, and then got the shuttle back. And it was pretty for me. I actually kind of got lucky. I was there and back in like 2 hours, so which was nice because you don't want to be out in the sun, before a race. You just want to try to rest as much as you can, especially with the race happening the day before. So there and back, and then I just sort of finished up dinner. Everyone got back, and we had Marcus and Ben and Craig and the guys came over and we had dinner, and I think we were in bed by like 8:30, 9 o'clock. Had a good sleep, and
Was it Camelo run that day? Did anyone do that or?
Yeah. John Mann did it. I think he got the win.
Oh, epic.
The WA crew did it, like Donnie and Julian, and yeah, John said it was super fun. It was definitely windier for that day than it was the M2M run.
Nice.
And yeah, I think that was a good
What
turnout.
a beast, taking on the run in between the two big runs. Jeez.
Yeah, he said he just surfed, but
yeah,
I think he surfed the first bit, then sort of raced the last bit. But yeah, he was there to enjoy it. It was cool. But not many other people.
Good on him.
Yeah, I was keen to actually just use like a big foil and just cruise it, just sort of get the legs working. But we had to leave our place at like 9 a.m, and then the race didn't start till 1, and then the briefing was at 3.
That would have been a big day.
Just a big day in the sun. So I was like, I want to, but yeah, if I was staying if I was staying in Koa Kai, I probably would have been more likely to do it because I could have finished the race and sort of had a shower and had a good out of the sun and could have cruised in the morning. But staying on the west side wasn't so good for the logistics.
So how was that sleep? I remember last year I had a pretty awful sleep, even though I had really good accommodation. I think the nerves were just running through me.
I slept well. Actually, the night after M2M, I didn't because the fan I had, like you have like a summer setting where it like blows wind, and then a winter setting where it like sucks wind. Dude, my fan was on the winter setting, and it was just like spinning so loud, but it wasn't pushing any air. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I like got up in the middle of the night and was like trying to sort it out, but I didn't want to wake everyone up, and I just left it. Ended up falling asleep and like sweating, and so. But I slept well both nights. I didn't sleep. People would say I slept like a baby. I didn't sleep like a baby. I slept better than a baby. I wasn't waking up every couple of hours, and yeah, I slept well.
Nice. So was it kind of windy this year? How's the conditions?
Yeah, M2O was far out. That the first 30 Ks was so quick. I used the 680R, and I was using it kind of regardless of the conditions because couldn't keep up with the boys in M2M. So I just sort of went all in. I'm like, I'm using a smaller foil and see how we go. And the start could have used smaller. Honestly, it was the first 30 Ks. I was averaging like 30, like multiple sub 2s. If it wasn't sub 2, it was like just over like 205, 206 kind of thing.
How was that new start? Was it just, it's easy, like it's straight in the bumps?
So easy. M2O was a better race than M2M. Like it was windier, right. The bumps were better. The first 30 Ks was nuts. Bit of a light spot. Like it's like the wind kind of died, or the current hit it, or something happened. It got real weird. The swells were still running, but it was glassy, and a lot of the wingers had a hard time actually. The wingers were much closer to our times this year because of that, I think. And then the Hawaii Kai run was good. Like from long way outside Hawaii Kai, but the bumps are really nice. It was nice and east, and the bumps all the way to the finish. To be honest, I think it wasn't
much quartering. It was just going downwind.
Seriously, no quartering. Like it was a straight downwind shootout. It was just like a few guys seemed to go a little bit too far north, even like they sort of went into China All and then did the Hawaii Kai run, whereas I was further south than a lot of the guys around me for most of the race, and they sort of came down to me towards Hawaii Kai. I could have gone further south, like to get to like Diamond Head, but I was just hanging on at that point. My legs kind of started cramping up just about 40 Ks in, so the last 20 Ks was like instead of pumping, I had to use the paddle to sort of pump. My legs just weren't working, and I felt real unco. like just couldn't get my feet in the right spot, and it's coinciding with the sort of lighter section, and it just meant I was went from doing like low twos to like 220s, just sort of, and on the
Do you reckon?
680, it's like 220, 230 is like, that's getting pretty close to, like, you're working hard to
Cool.
keep it up. Yeah.
Do you reckon that has something to do with the maybe what you were eating, or
No,
just like
I was pushing hard. I
multiplying
was
of,
just,
or you were
it
just
was
pushing hard? There's
just
no,
pushing. I was just like,
no question.
it was the first race that I was actually in the mix for the top five. So,
Mhm.
I was next to Jeffrey for a lot of the race. Kane, I could see not too far in front of me. And yeah, I was more competitive. I was in the mix, and when you're in the mix, you push harder. So, my boat captain was egging me on too. Andrew's a legend, and he was like, at some points I was catching the guys at the front, other times I was holding, sometimes losing, obviously. But I it was the closest I felt to being in that top five group for the whole week of racing, I guess. So
Mhm.
um, that was why my legs gave up. Nothing to do with
Was
married a Molokai before, nothing to do with nutrition. I just felt like it was training, so I had to be doing more of that, pushing as hard as I was in training, and maybe some gym work to get the legs stronger. And yeah, it's become like a proper sport now, rather than like a, you know um, surfing downwind event.
so how, when you say pushing and that you need to train for it a bit more, give us like an idea. You were pushing, you said, for 30Ks really hard before you gave out. Is that
Yeah,
an
35,
hour of
40.
going red line?
Um, it wasn't red line because the bumps are pretty good, but it just like when you were on a good bump, you had to sort of like really lean forward and hold it down. And then when that bump disappeared, it was just like pumping to try to link the next bump in front, or a little bit to your right or a little bit to the left to get around that big peak in front of you. So it was pushing, like you're working to get speed, you're holding the speed. And that's when I was resting, like when I had the speed. And then when I lost the bump, or
The glide.
the
Yeah.
push, I had to pump to hold the glide and hold the speed for as long as I could, which for M2M I wasn't doing. I was able to stand there, and you couldn't, because the bumps are closer together for M2M, you kind of sort of surf a little bit in between, and you're better off traversing than you are up and overing, because the bumps are shorter and not steeper, but they're like shorter. So to go up and over is, I found, much harder on the 770, whereas the 680, once I had speed, I could really push.
Right.
Yeah.
So were
Yeah.
you thinking that it's more the pressure on the feet coming back through that the lift through the board, or do you think it's because your heart rate's at like what, 180 for 50 minutes?
Um, no, I wasn't at 180 for 50 minutes, but I was like 140 to 160 kind of thing. So like that's working.
Mm.
And yeah, it was just it's the heart rate, but then also like just that pressure through the legs. I had it like if on my right kneecap, just to the right of my right kneecap. So like, I guess it's like your I'm not sure, I'm not that good with the muscle groups, but it's like your quad almost. Your quad was cramping up. It was
Mhm.
up sort of along towards your ITB band. Um, that sort of muscle there was feeling it. It was locking up basically. It was not happy
Mm.
with me. Um,
Do you have an opinion on the I like, you probably didn't see it because you're in the mix with the top five, but it was crazy, the support boat lineup, what happened, because
yeah,
everyone had a filmer on their boat, and they really wanted to be with their rider the whole way. And I know there was probably like a safety briefing of, you can't
yeah. I think it was 15
get in
minutes
there.
or 10 to 15 minutes was the plan at the briefing. But yeah,
Mhm.
all the boats got there super early. I probably had the worst start in all the races for M2O, and it was just because I was at the wrong end of the line and there was no horn. It was just a flag, and I got up. Um, I was probably still in the top 20, maybe top 15, but there were 10 to 15 people in front of me, and I was like, this is bad, because I knew
Mhm.
from even M2M, one or two boats can really muck you up. And if there's 10 to 15 boats in front of you, man, you're in big trouble. Like that's going to affect your line, your rhythm, all the above. So I made a real conscious effort. I started in the north side of the line, but because I didn't have the best start, I actually cut down far south of everyone and got my own clean water. And I'm so glad I did that because of all the stories of everyone getting sort of messed up. Perth started near me too, but he went north to get away from the boat wash. And yeah, I think that, yeah, everyone's got a story of like, it was crazy. Just the turbulent water of a boat that went by like even 2 minutes or a minute ago. There was like a few people talked about, but there's like an air pocket gets stuck on your foil, even though you haven't breached, but the turbulent water going at the speeds we were going at the beginning created like, it felt like a plastic bag on your foil, and you had to like sort of like pump it hard or turn a little bit to get that air pocket off. And that was just the turbulent water, but you add in the boat washers as well. Kind of, you can use 1 or 2 to your advantage, but 5, 6, 7, 10, it just becomes a complete washing machine. They're gonna have to change that because it was dangerous. It was dangerous. The water, the people coming down, that number of boats in such a small area, it's gonna make the race different. And I think they're probably gonna have to have like everyone pays an extra $500, $700, and that goes towards safety.
Yeah, I reckon it looked honestly extremely dangerous. Especially coming off the back of poor Zane Schweitzer, who just was in a boat accident. Like, when I seen that firsthand through all the live feeds, I was like, this is a fucking joke. Like, this is absolutely, someone could die. Like, someone honestly could die because there was over 100 races. Everyone's got a boat. Everyone doesn't know who their boat captain is. They could be some drunk fisherman that's just keen to collect the money on the day, and like they don't know how to escort. They could just run someone over easily. It could be really detrimental.
A lot of discussion of that after, and I think they're going to have to change it. And then I think the event organisers are open to changing it. They did it with the wingers this year. They had it was optional escorts, and they had EPIRBs and radios, and it's doable. Especially it's a 2 to 4 hour race now. Whereas for the prone and SUP, it's a 4 to 8 hour race. It's double.
I honestly I don't understand why there's just not 50 boats and a boat at every kilometer. They're not moving.
Yeah. Seriously, that'd be way better. Yeah.
It's cheaper than everyone getting their own boat. The boats aren't moving. If they do move, they're just idling a little bit forward or back. Like they're not like starting up their engine. And
they'll be they'll organise it and they'll figure it out. But I think honestly, you need like one lead boat, just so you've got that, because that can be your media. And then you should have boats, like 10 boats to the north, 10 boats to the south, and like 10 sweeping boats. And that's what's at like 30. You do less than 30 boats and it'd be safer, because the reason you can't have like one boat every kilometer is because the field is stretched out like 2-3 kilometers wide, So I think north, south, and then like at the rear and at the front, and you're pretty much covered, I think.
So you made it all the way to the end. You didn't come off foil, even though you were hurting.
Yeah, I really had to back off the pace. So yeah, I was bummed because I was feeling good up until
that must have mentally hurt. Hey.
It was not so much like, it was just, I just got to survive, and knowing how the finish can be, I was like, I got to pump the brakes a little here and just survive. Looking at my stats, I was actually surprised I didn't, like, I felt like I was going so slow for so long, and I was still doing a few 2:15s, 2:10s even when I was like holding on. But yeah, I managed to get my heart rate down in the last sort of 5 to 10 Ks. I got back to did like a 2:06 or something, coming in on the Hawaii Kai run. So I felt like I recovered pretty well, didn't lose too many places. Had a good battle with Guido and one of the twins from Tahiti. They got me, but it was kind of, I felt like I was in that race for within that little thing, and it felt good. It was cool to come in the finish. I to me, it was too easy. Like as a world championship, the way I know Molokai to Oahu, it was like that was a like better than some M2Os I've done, So it's like M2Ms that married to Molokais that I've done. It was easier. It was longer, but it was like the bumps were better. So, I think it's really good for majority of riders, but I think for advanced riders, as everyone's skill set gets more, like I talked about at the beginning, how like I've got an advantage at low end foiling because of the coaching I do. High end foiling, it's a different skill set, and Edo is leading that. But it's not fun. Like I spoke to Edo after the race, and he's like, "Man, I said that was fun." He's like, "Dude, I didn't have any fun. That was just work. That was like going for a run and just pushing as hard as you can for 2 hours." And I was like, "Man, that sucks. Is that where we're getting?" I said to him, "Is that where we're heading? Is that where the sport's going?" He's like, "Yeah, I won't be doing that for another like 3-4 months. I just want to enjoy my foiling for the next little bit. But next year I'm going to be training, 7 days a week, gym and 7 days a week downwind foiling." And I'm like, I was kind of bummed, no one gets into downwind foiling just to pump, basically flat water pump, essentially same sort of cardio for 2 hours. And it was kind of like, I don't know if we need bigger conditions, if we need to go further distance, whether we need to change up the course for the top guys to make it like more interesting maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I think obviously it's a sport, and physical is important. But I was even chatting to like Jacko and Fiona after M2M, and they were just saying like you can actually rest more on a stand-up paddleboard than you can on a foil now if you're in the top 20. On a stand-up paddleboard, you can't go fast on the bump. So if you get on a bump, you get to rest and you can get to surf the bump. Whereas on a foil, if you're getting a good bump, you got to keep pumping and go over to the next one. So it's like, for me personally, I appreciate the physical, and props to the guys that smoked me, but it's like, I'm not even sure I want to be doing that. I'm not even sure it's a sport that I want to continue to push the way it currently is to be in that top echelon. And I think there's ways to change it. And honestly, the flat water start and the flat water finish last year was one way to change it. That the guys who were using tiny foils couldn't get up, and they took the risk and they get up in the middle, but then they couldn't get up at the end. So it's like, it makes it a little more interesting and a little bit more tactical. I was chatting to a few people after the race, and even if you had like put a few, and I think we should try it for some races at home, Kuey, but I think if you put a few markers and you got to traverse out, and then you got to traverse across to another point, you got to traverse another point, and basically weed out the tiny foils that you have to pump the whole time, and make it too hard that you can use those foils, and you actually have to use something that can glide a little. And you have sections of the course that are really hard cuts, and you have section of the course that's just straight downwind, but you mix it up. Even like something as simple as putting like a section in the middle of the course where you have to pump upwind like 500 or 200 meters, like charity loop style, and if you're using a tiny foil, you can still use a tiny foil, but you have to paddle on your stomach to get up to that, upwind mark. Or if you use a big foil, you can pump upwind and continue the glide. And it's just going to make it, I'm just trying to think of ways to keep the fun. And I don't want this to come across as like me being salty because I didn't win. It's definitely not that. It's just like,
no, trust me, I understand. And it was like super interesting because like my partner Barrett was watching all the live feeds with me, because it's exciting to watch. But we were watching Edo's feed, and I was like, okay, watch this guy. He's literally squatting for 2 hours. And then we switched to, I think we're watching like Dan Jewling's one, and he's like surfing. And I was like, that's how you normally downwind. Like what Edo's doing is not what anyone does. Like maybe only like a few guys in the world do it. And I was just like, that is like physically the most amazing thing ever, because like, no one can even fathom doing that. But then like, hearing from your firsthand experience of you chatting to him, how he said that was awful. Like I didn't enjoy that. But, props to being able to do that, because that's Olympic status, right?
100%, 100%. And that's why I'm like, I want to be careful how I come across here, but it's like, we need it to be like, for the reason the sport's grown so fast is because it is fun. And if it becomes that, you're going to lose a lot of people, and you're not going to get 100 people entering, because they're just going to want to surf downwind, and they're not going to want to do that sort of stuff. So it's I think there's ways that we can, like, the King of the Cut back a couple of years ago, like, the King of the Cut wouldn't let us do the run, and we just sort of said, oh, let's just surf. And that was like it wasn't a race, it was just fun, but it was like that concept. How do we make that concept um achievable for a race to organize? And like Garmin's and Apple Watches and GPSs, it's a bit fiddly, and it can we even saw timing. Point A to point B was hard enough, but if we just add a few marks, that we make it a little more technical for those that are advanced, and keep the straight downwind for the beginner to intermediate downwind foilers, then you kind of you're opening up to everyone, and I'm hoping you can make it fun for everyone, and that's. I don't expect the Hawaiian races to change it, because I totally think what the product they delivered was good. The timing was a mess up, and it sort of ruined a bit of the sense of achievement for some. But it was like, they did a good job this year. They had a lot more people coming, entering, and it was a super fun 2 weeks. It was epic, and I'm spewing you couldn't make it, Kuey.
Oh mate, it was heartbreaking. But
Yeah.
I got my backup plan. I'm up in Cairns at the moment. Got a race on tomorrow, so I'm using that fire in my belly to try and smoke all these freaking downwinders up here.
Yeah, I'd be scared if I was them. Tell you what.
I'm coming in hot. Don't worry
Yeah,
about
yeah. I'm just
that.
double checking with
JB's
my
already trying to.
just double checking with my
JB's
flight.
already trying to wig me out. Nah, JB's been great. He's been such a good representative. He's getting involved with all the race pre-meetings and stuff, and good to have someone like that that's really pushing the representation of the sport. And I think we got like 13 races up here, so
Awesome. Yeah,
it should be a good little race.
yeah.
But yeah, back onto your thing. How is it going to play out next year? Surely it was 100 people this year. Last year it was 50. Next year is it 200, or do they start capping it and like making it, only if you've been in it before you can go again, or you need to show like race stats or.
Yeah, and I think when I first started doing Molokai to Oahu, you couldn't just enter; you had to qualify, and I think that's what it's going to be. They're probably not able to make more, like allowed to have more people in the race. Like 150 is probably the absolute max, and they're 130 this year, so they could easily get 200, I believe, next year if it keeps growing the way it is. But they're going to have to max it, like cap it, because of the logistics and safety and that sort of stuff. So I think I think it's good, and it's good that the demand is back for M2O, because when I first started it was like that. When 2019 it was less so. But yeah, no, I think training wise I'm going to do stuff different. I'm going to try to match Edo, see what I can do. But I think it's going to be. I'm super excited to be part of the sport as it is now. Honestly, it's epic. It feels like a sport this year. Last year it did too, but man, it's stepped up. And like I'm honestly proud to come 11th. It's a serious field of contenders, and I think I must have been like in the top 10 in the Koa Kai overall, and I created my dad division and the over 30s division and the Aussie division, and I was stoked to. I had a real good battle with Perth and Oscar in all races. Not that I knew they were there, but they were behind me the whole way. And Oscar was literally taking the same line as me, and Perth was too. So it was, it was good. It was fun. But we got to.
I'm super stoked for you. Hey, like I was really, I was following probably as much as anyone could. I was just watching everyone's feed and trying to get as much of my skin in the game while I was back in Australia. But like I was rooting for all you boys big time, and yeah, it was cool when I seen you guys all come in together, and and how well you did in all the races. Like you were all kind of neck and neck in all the races, and it's just. I think at the end of the day, like the way that I kind of evaluated it was that, these guys have the advantage because they're there, they can
Yeah.
train it, they're doing these runs all the time.
Yeah.
And like, obviously they're a lot younger than us. So that's an advantage. I'm not saying that is like, why they won. Like they won because they just trained harder and they did better, and
Yeah.
good on them. But like it's it's turning, the heat's turning up, which is great, and I love it. Like,
and it's definitely fueled the fire in our bellies. The Aussies.
I just really hope that it turns into a circuit. Like, I really hope the Europe thing becomes a thing. I hope there's a thing in Australia, because I think this could really yeah, go into the stratosphere of what it like. There's money in it. There's people who want to do it.
The
People who want to
potential's
watch
there.
it. Like
Yeah,
it's
the
just,
potential's there
yeah,
for sure.
it's
And yeah, I think we're at a really cool place right now that we can kind of create where it can go. And I think like, I don't want it to be this thing that like to me, wing racing downwind isn't what everyone's doing winging. Like most people are free winging downwind, and the wingers for M12 are just sailing downwind. And downwind falling is becoming like downwind fall racing is becoming like wing racing, where it's not what the majority are doing, and it makes this disconnect, and that's unhealthy, I think, for the sport. So if we can put a few things in place that can keep the fun aspect of it, I think it's just going to allow it to grow further. And yeah, I've actually got to go.
I think it's
my
important.
flight's about to go.
Oh,
But,
okay, sweet.
But just
No,
wrap
but just
up.
last
Yeah.
little thing. I think it's super important to listen to the uncles like yourself who have seen it happen in the past, like with the supping.
Yeah.
That like, you know, a lot of young people are like, nah, this is where it's at. Like, I think it's important to listen to, you know, the Dave Kalamas, the James Caseys, who have been through this cycle before through SUP and stuff. And you're trying to, you know, we're in something good right now, and to not let it get taken where it usually gets taken for us to steer the boat. So good on you, and super stoked with your achievement this year. Like, did so well. Team Codium.
Yeah. Was a Codium 40 to 49.
Lovely.
Craig, Ben, and Havana was sick.
Epic. Well, safe travel home. Thanks for your time. I'm sure everyone will be stoked to listen to this, and I'll see you when you get back.
Have to do a debrief of Cairns when I get back as well. Looking forward to it all, and see how it goes, and good luck.
Sounds good.
Catch you. Run into my flight.
Bye.
Bye.